I thought I was about to be arrested for life after I pissed on a royal guard's shoes. But what happened next left me speechless. Look, I'm not saying I make bad decisions. I'm just saying that my decisions occasionally snowball into something that could be classified as a natural disaster. And in this case, the disaster in question started with what seemed like an innocent, beer-fueled journey through London's pub scene. It was my first time in the UK, and I was determined to do all the touristy things. Buckingham Palace, Tower of London, Big Ben, you know, the classics. But fate and my friend Liam had other plans. Liam was British, born and raised, which meant he took two things very seriously: complaining about the weather and drinking like it was an Olympic event. The moment he heard I was in town, he called me up with a plan that involved, and I quote, a proper night out. None of that weak American nonsense. I should have known I was doomed the second I agreed. It started innocently enough. A cozy little pub with old wooden beams, some classic rock playing, and a bartender who looked like he'd been serving pints since the Victorian era. I had my first proper pint of warm, flat beer, which, to my horror, was considered normal here, and Liam enthusiastically announced that this was just the warm-up. What followed was a downward spiral of increasingly questionable choices. Pub number 2, a lively joint with cheap whiskey shots. Bad idea. Pub number 3, a place with a DJ who, for some reason, only played remixes of 80s movie soundtracks. Still not sure why we spent so much time there. Pub number 4, an Irish bar where I learned the hard way that just one more Guinness is a lie people tell themselves before disaster strikes. By pub number 5, I was officially in what I like to call Schrodinger's drunk zone. I was both absolutely fine and completely destroyed at the same time. I had reached that beautiful, delusional stage where my coordination was shot, but my confidence was at an all-time high. This is when Liam, in his infinite wisdom, said, "Mate, you know what we should do? Go see Buckingham Palace. It's, like, right there." Now, I don't know if you've ever tried using Google Maps while you're 5 pints and several whiskey shots deep, but let me tell you, it's a special kind of adventure. My phone kept insisting that Buckingham Palace was only a 20-minute walk away, but after walking for what felt like an eternity, we were still lost, giggling like idiots in front of some random statue. Eventually, we found the mall, that long, fancy road leading up to the palace, and suddenly, there it was, Buckingham Palace, all lit up and majestic, looking exactly like it does in movies. I was overwhelmed with drunken awe. "We have to get a selfie," I declared, as if I had just uncovered the greatest idea in human history. Liam, just as drunk and equally lacking in good judgment, agreed. "With a guard," he added, as if we were assembling a heist team and not two idiots stumbling through London at 2 a.m. And so, the mission was set. We were going to find a royal guard, take the most epic, slightly blurry selfie of all time, and cement our night in the history books of drunken tourism. But there was just one problem. All that beer had to go somewhere. Here's a scientific fact that should be studied more thoroughly. Beer multiplies in your bladder. You drink 1 pint, and it somehow turns into 3 gallons inside you. It's not hydration, it's a liquid conspiracy. By the time we reached Buckingham Palace, my bladder had reached full crisis mode. Not, oh, I should find a bathroom soon, but I am one sudden movement away from becoming a public menace. At first, I tried to convince myself I could hold it. After all, I was standing in front of one of the most famous buildings in the world, home to actual royalty, and peeing anywhere nearby would be an international crime, or at least a crime that would land me on some kind of watch list. But then my bladder sent a direct override command to my brain, and all higher thoughts shut down. There was no Buckingham Palace anymore. No history, no grandeur, no sense of dignity. There was only the mission. And the mission was simple: find a place to pee before my body took matters into its own hands. I turned to Liam, who was about as useful as a screen door on a submarine at this point. "Mate, I gotta pee," I whispered urgently. Liam, ever the wise and responsible friend, nodded solemnly and gave me the worst advice in human history. "Just find a spot, mate. It's London, everyone does it." Now, in sober daylight, I would have questioned this logic. But in drunken midnight logic, this made perfect sense. London is an old city. It has alleyways. It has dark corners. It has centuries of history, which, statistically speaking, probably means millions of people have peed here before me. I was, in a way, participating in a time-honored tradition, a legacy of sorts. Feeling deeply justified in my actions, I set off to find the ideal pee spot. Now, I'd like to think I moved like a stealthy, well-trained operative, slipping through the shadows with precision. In reality, I staggered away from Liam like a malfunctioning toddler, weaving through tourists and bouncing off light posts like a pinball. At one point, I stopped to inspect the statue, genuinely convinced for a moment that it was a real person I could ask for directions. Eventually, I spotted what seemed like the perfect location, a shadowy alcove tucked away near the palace gates. It was quiet. It was secluded. It was a historic-looking bit of stone, possibly part of some old structure, but my drunk brain decided that if it looked old enough, it probably didn't have security cameras. I waddled over, fumbling with my belt, and sighed as I finally let loose. Relief. Glorious, life-affirming relief. For approximately 3 perfect seconds, I experienced pure bliss. And then, I heard it. Clack. A sharp, precise noise. Not a random city noise. Not the wind. Not some drunk couple giggling in the distance. No, this was a noise that carried authority. A noise that demanded attention. A noise that instantly triggered every fight-or-flight response in my body. I turned my head midstream, dreading what I was about to see. And that's when I saw him. A royal guard. Standing. 2 feet away. Motionless. Unblinking. Towering over me like a living statue of judgment. And I was peeing on his boots. Let me tell you something. There are moments in life that redefine a person. Moments that instantly sober you up and make you reevaluate every choice that led to this exact second. This was one of those moments. Time slowed. My entire existence funneled into one singular fact. I was urinating on Her Majesty's official, government-assigned security personnel. A man trained to ignore anything happening around him. A man who had sworn an oath to remain stoic and unflinching, no matter what chaos unfolded before him. And I had just given him his worst test yet. My brain immediately tried to find a way out of this. Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't actually peeing on his boots. Maybe I was just close to him, and my drunken depth perception was off. I glanced down. Nope. Direct hit. A golden arc of regret. Panic surged through me. I had to fix this. And how do you fix peeing on a royal guard? You don't. But my drunk brain did not accept that reality. Oh my God. I gasped, still midstream, as if realizing this wasn't the proper way to behave near Buckingham Palace. I'm so sorry, mate. The words left my mouth before my brain could stop them. Mistake number 1. Because the one rule about royal guards is that they are supposed to be silent and unresponsive. They don't move. They don't speak. They don't acknowledge your existence. But when you pee on them, that rule apparently has a loophole. He inhaled sharply through his nose. His jaw clenched. His fingers twitched. And in that moment, I knew this man was fighting every instinct to remain professional. I had pushed him to his limit. Okay, I stammered, now trying to stop peeing midstream, which is a biological impossibility. Listen, we can fix this. Mistake number 2. Because now I sounded like a maniac. We can fix this. What was my plan? Offer him a soggy handshake and a heartfelt apology. Ask if I could Venmo him for new boots. I panicked harder. I swear, this was a total accident. I babbled, waving my hands as if that helped. I thought you were, like, a statue or something. Not a real guy. Wait, I mean, obviously, you're a real guy, but... He exhaled through his nose. A long, slow, terrifying exhale. That's when I saw it. A tiny twitch in his eye. A flash of pure, bottled-up rage. And at that exact moment, I realized I was about to die. I was about to be murdered outside Buckingham Palace by a man in a fuzzy hat. And the worst part, I deserved it. There are moments in life that hit you like a freight train. Moments where, in a single second, every ounce of stupidity in your body is replaced with a soul-crushing understanding of just how badly you've messed up. This was one of those moments. I had peed on a royal guard. Not near him. Not close to him. Not in his general vicinity. Direct hit. Bullseye. Dead center. And I was still midstream. There is no feeling in the world quite like the realization that you are actively peeing on a man trained to ignore the existence of tourists, but that even he has reached his breaking point. For a few horrible, agonizing seconds, time seemed to freeze. It was just me, him, and the ever-widening puddle of disgrace forming beneath his immaculate, government-issued boots. My brain did not handle this well. You'd think that, in a crisis like this, a person would have a clear, immediate action plan. Some kind of instinctual damage control mechanism. A way to backtrack, apologize, fix things. Not me. My drunk idiot brain? It decided that the best way to handle this was to start talking. "Oh my God," I gasped, in a voice so high-pitched I briefly left the human vocal range. I clamped a hand over my mouth. This was bad. I had two choices. Run. Apologize. I stupidly chose option 2. This was mistake number 1. "Listen," I blurted, still very much actively urinating. "I swear. This was an accident." The words left my mouth before my brain could stop them. Mistake. Big mistake. Because let me tell you something. There is no such thing as an acceptable accidental pee on a person scenario. There is no sentence in the English language that will ever make that okay. I tried anyway. I mean, like, "Oh God, I didn't see you there. You guys stand so still. It's honestly kinda wild, right?" I let out a nervous laugh, as if that helped. I thought this was just, like, an old building, and I was like, wow, what a great place to. Abort. 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 I was actively explaining my thought process, while still peeing. He had still not moved, but I could feel the rage radiating off of him. I needed to fix this. Quickly. So, in my infinite wisdom, I did what any drunken moron would do. I tried to redirect. "Look, mate, this is partially my friend's fault." Mistake number 2. He blinked. Slowly. I had his attention now. Fantastic. I immediately regretted everything. I pointed vaguely toward the crowd, where Liam was still taking selfies like an unsupervised toddler in an art museum. He told me it was fine. "You see," I rambled. He was like, "Oh yeah, people do this all the time." And I was like, "Okay, well, if that's the case, why was I still talking? Stop talking." But no, I kept going. "I genuinely thought you were a statue." "Okay," I pleaded, somehow doubling down on the worst possible excuse. "Not that. Like, you're not a person. Obviously, you are, and I respect that." And I paused, mid-panic attack, realizing that I had finally stopped peeing. Which was great. Fantastic. Finally, a win. Except for the fact that I had just peed on a royal guard, which, historically speaking, tends to overshadow any tiny personal victories. I swallowed hard. "So, we good." Mistake number 3. Because that was the moment he moved. Clack. The stomp of his boot echoed through my soul. Clack. The other boot. A shift in stance. A realignment of pure, silent fury. The royal guard had officially broken character. And I was about to die. I stumbled backwards, stepping directly into my own puddle of shame. I flailed wildly for balance, arms windmilling like a broken amusement park ride. The guard tilted his head just slightly. That was the only warning I got. Because 1 second, I was standing there, begging the universe to undo the last 2 minutes of my life. And the next, his knee rocketed toward my soul. I had been hit before. Not in a cool way. Not in a street fight or some dramatic action movie scene. No. My experience with physical pain has been exclusively humiliating. A dodgeball to the face in middle school, a rogue frisbee to the throat at a barbecue, and that one time I headbutted my own knee while trying to put on skinny jeans. But this was different. This was an elite, highly trained, possibly government-sanctioned knee strike straight to my baby maker. And dear reader, I am here to tell you, I felt it in my soul. Let's back up. For those who have never witnessed a royal guard in person, let me explain something. These men are built like medieval siege towers. They are unmoving, unshakable, pure muscle encased in ceremonial fabric. And me? I was an intoxicated moron who had just emptied his bladder on government property. You see the problem. The moment his knee made contact, my entire existence compressed into a single, sharp burst of white-hot agony. It was as if every mistake I had ever made in life had gathered together for a group meeting, right between my legs. One moment, I was standing. The next, I was folded in half like a defective lawn chair. No thoughts, no words, just pain. I don't know if I made a sound, but if I did, I can only assume it was something inhuman, something ancient, the kind of noise that cavemen must have made when they realized fire was hot. A single, guttural, agonized H. The crowd gasped. Someone screamed. Somewhere in the distance, I heard my traitorous best friend, Liam, wheeze laughing. I collapsed to my knees, hands clutching what was left of my dignity. My forehead kissed the pavement. I needed medical attention. I needed Jesus. This was not a normal kick. This was a precise, expertly executed, battle-ready maneuver from a man who probably spent his weekends kicking down castle doors for sport. I could hear the blood pulsing in my skull. I could hear the soft, disbelieving murmurs of the gathered tourists. And worst of all, I could still hear Liam losing his absolute mind. "Wah, bro," he wheezed. You got dropped like a sack of, oh my God. If I had any strength left in my body, I would have killed him where he stood. But alas, I was currently folded in half on the pavement, experiencing what could only be described as a full-body spiritual crisis. My vision went fuzzy. I saw the face of every ancestor before me, shaking their heads in disappointment. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, a voice, a deep, authoritative, British-accented voice. "Move along." At first, I thought I had hallucinated it, because surely, after such a public execution, I would be given a moment of peace to reflect on my sins. But no, this man, this stoic, God-teased soldier of a human being, had knee-deep me into another dimension, and then immediately resumed standing at attention like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just obliterated my bloodline. Like he hadn't just permanently altered my ability to reproduce. Like I was nothing more than a mild Tuesday inconvenience. Liam, who at this point was barely breathing from laughter, finally managed to stumble forward, crouching next to my crippled, gasping form. "Bro," he choked out, he just destroyed your lineage, man." I wanted to respond. I wanted to say something cool. Something that would restore a shred of my manhood. But all that came out was a high-pitched wheeze. I stayed there for what felt like several lifetimes. Eventually, a kind old woman from the crowd placed a gentle hand on my shoulder and whispered, "You poor day." Which, frankly, was the final nail in my coffin. I was officially done. Forever. I had no choice but to accept my fate. I was the guy who got destroyed by a royal guard. My children would hear this story. Their children would hear this story. Somewhere out there, my future self was shaking his head in shame. I had disgraced my bloodline. And yet, despite the agony, despite the soul-crushing humiliation, despite Liam still gasping for breath between wheezes, I knew, deep down, this was only the beginning. Let me tell you, there's a very specific type of rock bottom you hit when you're lying on the pavement outside a historic landmark, clutching your bruised dignity, while a literal royal guard stands over you like a medieval executioner who just did his job and is now waiting for his next victim. I was there, writhing, wheezing, questioning everything. But even in my near-unconscious state, I could tell one thing with absolute certainty. This man was done. Not done like, "Oh wow, that was annoying." No, done like, "I have spent years training for combat. I have sworn an oath to defend this institution with my life, and instead of facing actual threats, I'm dealing with a drunken idiot who just watered my boots." He was absolutely at his limit. And me? I was too busy experiencing a full-body shutdown to even attempt fixing the situation. Which is why I didn't notice, at first, that we had company. The sound hit me first. Not just the low murmur of the gathered crowd. Not just Liam's still breathless, betrayal-fueled laughter. No, it was the distinct, unmistakable sound of a police radio. I froze. Or at least, I froze as much as a man can when he's still curled up like a dying shrimp on a historic London sidewalk. And then I heard the voice. All right, what's all this, then?" The law. Now, listen, I have never been arrested. I am not what one would call a criminal mastermind. I have never even talked my way out of a speeding ticket. And yet, in this moment, as I remained slumped in the fetal position, still nursing the mother of all groin injuries, I knew one thing. I needed to speak. I needed to fix this. I needed to explain, quickly, before my name ended up on some international "do not let this man near the monarchy" watch list. I turned my head. Bad idea. The sudden movement made my entire body scream in protest. But I needed to see who I was dealing with. Two officers. One was a tall, broad-shouldered man in his 40s, radiating the specific energy of someone who has absolutely no patience for nonsense. The other was a younger officer, probably new, whose expression was currently hovering somewhere between concern and desperately trying not to laugh. Neither of these were good signs. I attempted to sit up. Failed. Made an unholy noise. Both officers stared. The stoic, emotionally unavailable royal guard did not move. The older cop sighed. "Right," he muttered, pinching the bridge of his nose. "What happened here?" The crowd erupted in a flurry of overlapping voices. "Oh my God, he peed on him. The guard kicked him in the nuts, mate, hard." He was just standing there, and then bam. I got the whole thing on video. He folded like a deck chair. The officer held up a hand. Enough, he said, with a deep, world-weary exhaustion of a man who did not sign up for this. Then he turned to me. "Sir," he said, exhaling, "do you need medical attention?" My brain was not fully online, so what I said next was not planned. I think my ancestors just felt that. There was a long, awkward pause. The younger cop snorted. The older one closed his eyes briefly, as if mentally debating his life choices. Liam, because he was a goblin of a human being, absolutely lost it. I saw his knees buckle as he gasped for breath, barely standing upright from sheer amusement. "Sir," the cop said again, his patience hanging by a thread. "Are you intoxicated?" I considered this. Technically, yes, extremely. I was, in fact, several pints deep into a questionable life decision. But I also knew that saying this out loud would likely not help my current predicament. So, instead, I attempted what I thought was a sober, responsible headshake. Instead, my body, still recovering from the traumatic reconfiguration of my entire reproductive system, betrayed me. What came out was a slurred, garbled attempt at human language. I was just accident. My legs. The older cop stared. The younger cop pressed his lips together so hard he was visibly shaking. The royal guard still hadn't moved, just stood there, an absolute monument of discipline, silently judging me harder than my own mother ever had. "Right," the officer sighed again, pinching the bridge of his nose. "So, are you telling me you just accidentally relieved yourself on a member of the royal guard?" I swallowed, nodded, and then he, in turn, defended himself by kicking you. A longer pause, another shame-filled nod. The cop sighed so deeply it aged him at least 10 years. Liam, once again, completely lost it. Defended himself, he wheezed. "Bro, he sent you to the afterlife." I shot him a look. It did not help. The older officer pulled out a small notepad. "All right," he muttered, scribbling something down. "So, public urination, disturbing the peace." My soul left my body. I didn't mean to. I blurted out, my voice still barely functional. It wasn't. I thought it was a wall. There was another long pause. The younger cop made a strangled noise. "I swear to you," the royal guard twitched. The older officer sighed. "All right," he muttered, rubbing his temples. "Listen, you're clearly a tourist, and you're clearly an idiot." I nodded. This was a fair assessment. "You're not the first drunk moron we've had to deal with," he continued. "And I doubt you'll be the last." Hope. A tiny, flickering light at the end of this horrifying tunnel. Then, just as I thought I was about to be let off with a warning, a voice. "Oi, mate, your video's going viral already." My stomach dropped. Liam, who had zero sense of self-preservation, whipped around. "Oh, hell yes, let's see it." I wanted to die. I wanted to cease existing. But most of all, I wanted to go back in time and punch myself in the face before any of this had happened. The officer, who had previously been considering mercy, visibly rethought his stance. "Right," he said, closing his notepad. "You're coming with us." And that, dear reader, is how I ended up in the back of a police car, still limping, still dying inside, and absolutely certain that my life was about to get even worse. And trust me, it did. You ever have one of those moments where your entire existence teeters on the edge of disaster, and you're just sitting there, hoping that some higher power takes pity on you? That was me, slumped against the side of the police car, still half dead from the groin obliteration of the century, while two officers stood there evaluating whether I was worth the paperwork. I wasn't, which, honestly, felt like both an insult and a miracle. The older cop, who I had now decided was ***, either my guardian angel or my personal Grim Reaper, depending on how this played out, ***, flipped his notepad closed and let out a sigh so heavy it could have altered the weather. "All right," he muttered. "Here's what we're gonna do." I held my breath. Liam, because he was a goblin in human form, was still grinning like a lunatic. The younger cop had nearly bitten through his own lip, still holding back laughter. The royal guard still hadn't moved, possibly because he was legally required to pretend he no longer saw me, or because he was manifesting my public execution. Either way, I didn't feel particularly safe. The officer crossed his arms. "Son," he said, his voice dripping with the exhausted authority of a man who had seen far, far worse than me but was still annoyed to be here. I think getting kicked in the bollocks is punishment enough. I blinked. Sir? We're not pressing charges, he continued. The words didn't compute. Liam's jaw actually dropped. Wait. What? I croaked. The officer just shook his head. If I had to haul in every drunk idiot who made a bad decision near Buckingham Palace, he sighed, we'd need a whole separate wing at the station. I was too shocked to speak. The younger officer looked equally surprised, but I could tell he was deeply relieved to not have to explain to his superior why he booked a tourist for an accidental royal urination incident. The older cop pointed a finger at me. Here's what's gonna happen, he said. You're going to apologize, again, to the fine gentleman whose boots you disrespected. I nodded so fast my brain nearly rattled out of my skull. You're gonna get your drunk ass off this pavement. Another quick nod. And you're gonna go straight back to your hotel, drink a gallon of water, and rethink your life choices. I was practically saluting at this point. Yes, sir. Absolutely, sir. No further life choices will be made, sir. He rolled his eyes. The younger cop, who was actively biting his cheek to hold back laughter, reached down to help me to my feet. Big mistake. Because as soon as I was upright, my body, still struggling to recover from the great nutcracker incident of 202X, decided it was done. I immediately collapsed onto Liam. He was not expecting it, which meant we both went down like a dying Jenga tower. The younger cop lost it. Liam, beneath me, wheezed out a strangled, tear-soaked laugh. Even the older cop, stoic, exhausted, clearly questioning his career choices, had to turn away for a moment. I somehow managed to peel myself off the pavement, again, gripping Liam for support as he continued to be absolutely useless. The officer just shook his head. Get out of here, he muttered. And just like that, I was free. I hobbled over to the Royal Guard, still red-faced and reeling from the worst night of my life. He was stone-cold, unmoving, absolutely committed to ignoring my existence. I cleared my throat. Sorry about your shoes, I mumbled. He did not blink, did not acknowledge me, just kept staring forward with the intensity of a man who was pretending I had never been born. Fair enough. I gave him a solemn nod of respect and turned away, nearly tripping over my own feet. Liam caught my arm, still snickering. Mate, he whispered, grinning so hard his face was about to split in half. I cannot believe you just survived that. Me neither. With one final nod to the officers who had spared me, we stumbled off into the night. And that, dear reader, is how I managed to escape what could have been an international incident. But trust me, the real pain was still to come. Because the next morning, I woke up to a world-ending hangover, a pain in my groin that felt like I had been cursed by an ancient sorcerer, a phone exploding with notifications. I groaned, rubbing my face, as I reached for my phone. There was a text from Liam. Liam, mate, you need to check Twitter. Like, right now. Me, why? Liam, you're famous. And that, my friends, is when I realized this story was far from over.